A house could have many unexpected secrets. Small pantries, unexpected doors, trapdoors in the ceiling. But it may not be wise to get too curious.
Trapdoor by Red Bradbury. Read by Karl. Clara Peck had lived in the old house for some 10 years before she made the strange discovery. Halfway upstairs to the second floor, on the landing in the ceiling, the trapdoor. Well, my God. She stopped dead, mid-stairs, to glare at the surprise, daring it to be true. It can't be. How could I have been so blind? Good grief, there's an attic in my house. She marched up and downstairs 1,000 times in 1,000 days and never seen. Damned old fool. Then she almost tripped going down, and forgotten what she came up for in the first place. Well, for lunch, she arrived to stand on the trapdoor again, like a tall, thin, nervous child with pale hair and cheeks, her two bright eyes darting, flixing, staring. Now I've discovered the damn thing, what do I do with it? Storage room up there, I bet. Well, and she went away, vaguely troubled, feeling her mind slipping out of the sun. To hell with that, Clara Peck, she said, vacuuming the parlor. You're only 57. Not senile yet, by God. But still, why hadn't she noticed? It was the quality of silence, that was it. The roof had never leaked, so no water had ever tapped the ceiling. The high bees never shifted any wind, and there were no mice. The rain had disappeared, and the memes groaned, and the mice danced in their attic. She would have glanced up and found the trapdoor. But the house had stayed silent, and she had stayed blind. Bosh, she cried at supper. She finished the dishes, read until 10, went to bed early. It was during the night she heard the first faint Morse code tapping, the first graffiti scratching above, behind the blank ceiling's pale lunar face. Half asleep, her lips whispered, "Mouse?" Then it was dawn. Going downstairs to fix breakfast, she fixed her trapdoor with a steady, small girl stare, felt her skinny fingers twitch to go fetch the stepladder. Hell, she muttered. Why bother looking at an empty attic? Next week, maybe. For about 3 days after that, the trapdoor vanished. That is, she forgot to look at it, so it might as well not have been there. But around midnight on the third night, she heard the mouse sounds, or whatever they were sounds, drifting across her bedroom ceiling like milkweed ghosts touching the loft surface of the moon. From that odd thought, she shifted to tumbleweeds or dandelion seeds, or just plain dust taken from an attic sill. She thought of sleep, but the thought didn't take. Lying flat in her bed, she watched the ceiling so fixedly she felt she could x-ray whatever it was that cavorted behind the plaster. A flea circus? A tribe of gypsy mice in exodus from a neighbor's house? Several had been shrouded recently to look like dark circus tents, so that pest killers could toss in killer bombs and run off to let the secret life on the places die. That secret life had most probably packed its fur luggage and fled. Clara Peck's boarding house attic, free meals, was their new home away from home. And yet, as she stared, the sounds began again. They shaped themselves in patterns across the wide ceiling's brow. Long fingernails that, scraping, wandered to this corner and that of the shut-away chamber above. Clara Peck held her breath. The patterns increased. The soft prowlings began to cluster in an area above and beyond her bedroom door. It was as if the tiny creatures, whatever they were nuzzling another secret door above, wanting out. Slowly, Clara Peck sat up in bed and slowly put her weight to the floor, not wanting it to creak. Slowly she cracked her bedroom door. She peered into a hall flooded with cold light from a full moon, which poured through the landing window to show her the trapdoor. Now, as if summoned by her warmth, the sounds of a tiny lost ghost feet above rushed to cluster and fret at the trapdoor rim itself. Christ, thought Clara Peck, they hear me. They want me to... The trapdoor shuddered gently with the tiny rocking weights, for where it was that was a rustle there. And more the invisible spider feet or rodent feet of the brown curls of old and yellow newspaper touched and rustled the wooden frame. Louder and still louder. Clara was about to cry, "Go! Get!" when the phone rang. "Gah!" gasped Clara Peck. She felt a ton of blood plunge like a broken weight down her frame to crush her toes. "Gah!" She ran to seize, lift, and strangle the phone. "What?" she cried. "Clara, it's Emma Crowley. What's wrong?" "My God," shouted Clara. "You scared the hell out of me. Emma, why are you calling this late?" There was a long silence as the woman across town found her own breath. "It's silly. I couldn't sleep. I had this hunch. Emma? No, let me finish. All of a sudden I thought, Claire's not well, or Claire's hurt, or... Clara Pike sensed the edge of the bed, the weight of Emma's voice pulling her down. Eyes shut, she nodded. Clara, said Emma, 1,000 miles off. You all right? All right, said Clara at last. Not sick? House ain't on fire? No. Thank God. Silly me. Forgive? Forgiven. Well then, good night. And Emma Crowley hung up. Clara Peck sat looking at the receiver for a full minute, listening to a signal that said someone had gone away, then at last placed the phone blindly back in its cradle. She went back up to look at the trapdoor. It was quiet. Only a pattern of leaves from the window flickered and tossed on its wooden frame. Clara blinked at the trapdoor. Think you're smart, don't you? She said. There were no more prowls, dances, murmurs, or mouse pavans for the rest of that night. The sounds returned 3 nights later, and they were larger. Not mice, said Clara Peck. Good-sized rats, eh? In answer, the ceiling above executed an intricate cross-currenting ballet without music. This toe dancing, of a most peculiar sort, continued until the moon sank. Then as soon as the light failed, the house grew silent, and only Clara Peck took up breathing and life again. By the end of the week, the patterns were more geometrical. The sounds echoed in every upstairs room, the sewing room, the old bedroom, and in the library, where some former occupant had once turned pages and gazed over a sea of chestnut trees. On a tense night, all eyes and no face, with the sounds coming in drum beats and weird syncopations, at 3 in the morning, Clara Peck flung her sweaty hand at the telephone to dial Emma Crowley. Clara, I knew you'd call. Emma, it's 3 a.m. Aren't you surprised? No, I've been lying here thinking of you. I wanted to call but felt a fool. Something is wrong, yes? Emma, answer me this. If a house is an empty attic for years, and all of a sudden has an attic full of things, how come? I didn't know you had an attic. Who did? Listen, what started as mice that sounded like rats, and now sound like cats running around up there. What do I do? The telephone number of the Rats Away Pest Team on Main Street is... Wait. Here. Main 7799. You sure something's in your attic? The whole damn high school track team. He used to live in your house, Clara. Who? I mean, it's been all this time, right? And now, well, infested. Anyone ever die there? Die? Sure, someone died there. Maybe you haven't got mice at all. You're trying to tell me ghosts? Don't you believe? Ghosts are so-called friends who try spooking with them. Don't call again, Emma. But you called me. Hang up, Emma. Emma Crowley hung up. In the hall at 3:15 in the morning, Clara Peck glided out, stood for a moment, and pointed at the ceiling as if to provoke it. Ghosts? She whispered. The trapdoor's hinges, lost in the night above, oiled themselves with wind. Clara Peck turned slowly and went back, thinking about every movement got her to bed. She woke at 4:30 in the morning because of a wind shook the house. Out in the hall, could it be? She strained, she turned her ears. Very softly, very silently, the trapdoor in the stairwell ceiling squealed and opened wide. Can't be, she thought. The door flew up, in, and down with a thud. Is, she thought. I'll go make sure, she thought. No. She jumped, ran, locked the door, leaped back into bed. Hello? Rats away? She heard herself call, muffled under the covers. Coming downstairs, sleepless, at 6 in the morning, she kept her gaze straight ahead so as not to see that dreadful ceiling. Halfway down, she glanced back, started, and laughed. Silly, she cried. For the trapdoor was not open at all. It was shut. Rats away, she said to the telephone receiver at 7:30 on a bright morning. It was noon when the Rats Away inspection truck stopped in front of Clara Peck's house. In the way that Mr. Timmins, the young inspector, strolled with insolent disdain up the walk, Clara saw that he knew everything in the world about mice, termites, old maids, and old late-night sounds. Moving, he glanced around the world with that fine masculine hauteur of the bullfighter mid-ring or the skydiver fresh from the sky, or the womanizer wanting a cigarette, back turned to the poor creature in the bed behind him. As he pressed her doorbell, he was God's messenger. When Clara opened the door, she almost slammed it for the way his eyes peered away her dress, her flesh, her thoughts. His smile was the alcoholic smile. He was drunk on himself. There was only one thing to do. Don't just stand there, she shouted. Make yourself useful. She spun around and marked away from his shocked face. She glanced back to see if it had the right effect. Very few women had ever talked this way to him. He was studying the door. Then, curious, he stepped in. "This way," said Cora. She paraded through the hall, up the steps to the landing, where she had placed the metal stepladder. She thrust her hand up, pointing. "There's the attic. See if it makes sense of the damn noises up there. Don't overcharge me when you're done. Wipe your feet when you come down. Got to go shopping. Can I trust you not to steal me blind when I'm gone?" With each blow, she could see him veer off balance. His face flushed, his eyes shone. Before she could speak, she marched back down the steps to shrug on a light coat. "Do you know what mice sound like in attics?" she said over her shoulder. "I damn well do, lady," he said. "Clean up your language. You know rats? These could be rats or biggers. What's bigger than an attic?" "You got any raccoons around here?" he said. "How'd they get in?" "Don't you know your own house, lady?" But here they both stopped, for a small sound came from above. It was a small itch of a sound at first, then it scratched. Then it began a thump, like a heart. Something moved in the attic. Timmons blinked up the shut trapdoor and snorted. "Hey." Cora Peck nodded, satisfied, pulled on her gloves, adjusted her hat, watching. "It sounds like," drawled Mr. Timmons. "Yes?" "Did the sea captain ever live in this house?" he said at last. The sound came again, louder. The whole house seemed to drift and whine with the weight which was shifted above. "Sounds like cargo." Timmons shut his eyes to listen. "Cargo on a ship sliding when the ship changes course." He broke into a laugh and opened his eyes. "Good God," said Cora, and tried to imagine that. "On the other hand," said Mr. Timmons, half smiling up at that ceiling, "you got a greenhouse up there or something? Sounds like plants growing. Or yeast, maybe, big as a doghouse getting out of hand. Heard of a man once raised yeast in his cellar. The front screen door slammed." Cora Peck, outside, glaring at his jokes, said, "I'll be back in an hour. Jump." She heard his laughter follow her down the walk as she marched. She hesitated only once to look back. A damn fool was standing at the foot of the ladder looking up. Then he shrugged, gave a what the hell gesture with his hands, and scrambled up the step ladder like a sailor. When Cora Peck marched back an hour later, the rest-away truck still stood silent on the curb. "Hell," she said to it, "thought you'd be done by now." Strange man tromping around, swearing. She stopped and listened to the house. Silence. "Odd," she muttered. "Mr. Timmons?" she called. And realizing she was still 20 feet from the open front door, she approached to go through the screen. "Anyone home?" She stepped to the door into a silence like the silence in the old days before the mice had begun to change to rats, and the rats had danced themselves into something larger and darker on the upper attic decks. It was a silence that, if you breathed it in, smothered you. She swayed at the bottom of the flight of steps, looking up, her groceries hugged like a dead child in her arms. "Mr. Timmons?" But the entire house was still. The portable ladder still stood waiting on the landing, but the trapdoor was shut. Well, it was obviously not up in there, she thought. He wouldn't climb and shut himself in. Damn fool's just gone away. She turned to squint at its truck abandoned in the bright noon square. "Truck broke down, I imagine. It's gone for help." She dumped her groceries in the kitchen for the first time in years, not knowing why, lit a cigarette, smoked it, lit another, and made a loud lunch, banging skillets and running the can opener over time. The house listened to all this and made no response. But too caught the silence hung about her like a cloud of floor polish. "Rats away," she said. She dialed the phone. The pest team owner arrived half an hour later, but by motorcycle, to pick up the abandoned truck. Tipping his cap, he stepped into the screen door to chat with Cora Peck and look at the entry rooms and avoid the silence. "No sweat, ma'am," he said at last. "Charlie's been on a few benders lately. He's sure to be fired tomorrow. What was he doing here?" With this, he glanced up the stairs at the stepladder. "Oh," said Cora Peck quickly, "he was just looking at everything." "I'll come myself tomorrow," said the owner. As he drove away in the afternoon, Cora Peck slowly moved the stairs to lift her face towards the ceiling and watched the trapdoor. "He didn't see you either," she whispered. Not a beam stirred, not a mouse danced in the attic. She stood like a statue, feeling the sunlight shift and lean to the front door. Why, she wondered. Why did I lie? Well, for one thing, the trapdoor's shut, isn't it? I don't know why, she thought, but I don't want anyone going up that ladder ever again. Isn't that silly? Isn't that strange? She ate dinner early, listening. She washed the dishes, alert. She put herself to bed at 10 o'clock, but in the old downstairs maid room, for long years unused. Why she chose to lie in this dead downstairs room she did not know. She simply did it, and lay there with aching ears and the pulse moving in her neck and in her brow. Rigid as a tomb carving under the sheet, she waited. Round midnight a wind passed, shook a pattern of leaves on her counterpane. Her eyes flicked wide. The beams of the house trembled. She lifted her head. Something whispered ever so softly in the attic. She sat up. The sound grew louder, heavier, like a large but shapeless animal prowling the attic dark. She placed her feet on the floor and sat looking at him. The noise came again, far up. A scramble like rabbit's feet here, a thump like a large heart there. He stepped out of the dark downstairs hall and stood bathed in moonlight that was like a pure, cool dawn filling the windows. Holding the banister, she moved stealthily up the stairs. Reaching the landing, she touched the stepladder and raised her eyes. She blinked. Her heart jumped and hid still. For as she watched, very slowly the trapdoor above her sank away. It opened to show her a waiting square of darkness like a mine shaft going up without end. "I've had just about enough," she cried. She rushed down the kitchen and came stumbling back up with hammer and nails to climb the ladder in furious leaps. "I don't believe any of this," she cried. "No more, do you hear? Stop!" At the top of the ladder she had to stretch into the attic, into the solid darkness with one hand and arm, which meant that her head had to poke halfway through. "Now!" she said. At that very instant, as her head shoved through and her fingers fumbled to find the trapdoor, a most startling, swift thing occurred. As if something had seized her head, as if she were a cork from her bottle, her entire body, her arms, her straight-down legs were yanked up into the attic. She vanished like a magician's handkerchief, like a marionette whose strings are grabbed by an unseen force. She whistled up. So swift was the motion that her Bradbury slippers were left standing on the stair ladder rungs. After that, there was no gasp, no scream, just a long breathing silence for about 10 seconds. Then, for no seen reason, the trapdoor slammed flat down shut. Because of the quality of silence in the old house, the trapdoor was not noticed again, until the new tenants had been in the house for about 10 years. The end.